Good morning, everyone. Morning. Matt, Defects, yeah. I can speak from experience here. But I'm glad you told a good dad joke there, Chip, because I don't have any good ones. Sorry, guys. But Matt Defects. So, how many people think they have Matt Defects on their jobs? I probably should see every hand in the room, and that's not to pick on anyone, but it happens, right? Sometimes it's beyond our control, and a lot of times it's within our control. But what I'd like to do here today is I got a bunch of stuff here I'm going to blast through, so put your seatbelt on. I got a lot of slides to go through. These presentations are available afterwards, as was mentioned earlier too, so again, if I kind of blast through something a little faster than you would like, it'll be available, and I'll be here for a while afterwards as well. So, real quick, what's the role of the paver? Put down a nice smooth mat, right? Meet our specs for grade, thickness, texture, and what's our driving public care about the most? Nice and smooth, right? Make it smooth. So when we start looking at those things, what's a mat defect? It's all those things that I'm going to cover, so I'm not going to read the laundry list there. What causes them? It's all those things, so I'm not going to read through that bullet list either, because we're going to see pictures and slides on all of these things. But a lot of it, some of it's equipment related, you know, if it's maintenance issues or setup issues, and other stuff is how we operate that equipment. So it's really a couple things. What do mat defects look like? Well, they look like lots of things, right? Lots of different things we see. In a perfect world, if I've got that paver set up properly and I'm doing things, quote, properly, that mat texture should look the same all the way from one end gate to the other, full width, right? I shouldn't have segregation. I shouldn't even really have texture differences in that mat. But mat defects, again, come in all shapes and sizes. We get random patch segregation. We get longitudinal stripes or auger shadows. You see in the bottom right there, that one looks nasty, right? Dragon mix, cold screed, or burned out heating element. So what happened here? Who's buying beer? Truck driver? Truck rolled away from the paver, right? Put the truck bed up, mix plopped into the hopper and pushed the truck away from the paver. So that's a mat defect, right? What's going to end up happening with that? Besides, hopefully you got a skid steer on the job you can pick that up with. But we get mix on the grade, right? So it's a spill on the grade. So we're going to take time to clean it up. It's going to be cool. But even while we're paving in between trucks, we get any spills on the grade like this, what do they end up becoming? Potholes, right? It might look beautiful, pave it, job's done, mat looks awesome. Our cores thankfully didn't fall right on one of those piles, and life is good, we move on. What do we see a year or two later? A pothole, right? It's a density thing, it's a smoothness. Any roller operators in the room? You find those spills when you're driving that roller and compacting that mix, because that stuff gets cold right away, doesn't compact properly, and you'll feel it underneath that steel drum. And that's just showing schematic there, right? Paver goes over those cold areas, and we're going to have density and smoothness issues there. I probably should have took this slide out because y'all don't do windrow paving here. This is an out west thing. Dump it on the ground with a belly dump and pick it up with the pickup machine. But the point is the same. When you get that spilled material on the grade, and this core came out of that last picture, when I was in my QC days, I had to figure this one out. It was driving me nuts seeing that material on the grade, so I took a core out. That's what it looked like. So you got the existing, you got the nice new mix on top, but it's pretty obvious that interface between the existing and where that material was on the grade, and it cooled off right away, right? No temperature, cooled quick. Even after the rollers got to it, never really got compacted. What gets in there? Water, right? And then what's it do? blows our pavement apart. So those spills are big things, and they come in all shapes and forms, right? Bad flashing, that rubber on the paver hopper there, or the truck bed just doesn't fit right. Push rollers on the paver aren't adjusted, so that truck bed can get all the way in the hopper and not spill mix out on the grade. So again, it's just in general, those grade or spills on the grade, wherever they're coming from, will lead to mat defects in terms of low density and smoothness issues. So again, just showing that cold material. There's your result a year or 2 or 3 later. You got those potholes. And if we're on thinner lifts, what to do? We get that spill on the grade, screed goes over it, and may even end up dragging rock or dragging mix like that, really thin over that area. And again, not going to get density, not going to get smoothness in those areas. This is a big one. I see it a lot. Paver operator folds the hopper wings, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but what do you got to be careful of? Spilling that mix out in front of the paver, right, when you're folding those wings. And it could be bad flashing. Again, that rubber material on the front of the hopper, it gets torn and wore out and all that, and that mix doesn't stay in the hopper, it spills out front of the paver. So another area to look at. Banging out truck tailgates, this one drives me nuts, right? You hear that truck, bang, right? He gets rid and he's doing what? Cleaning out his truck box, where? Right in front of the paver. Bad, 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 right? You're asking for problems in terms of durability, longevity, all that. What else is this guy doing? Hell, man, I'm on a production job. I want another truck in there. I don't want him diddling around, banging his tailgate and all that stuff. I want him out of there, right? So I can get the next truck in. And wherever you can do it, it's nice to have a clean out area, right? Truck pulls away from the paver, pulls off to this clean out area, wherever it is along the job. Bang out your tailgates, clean your hinges and pins, and you got the next truck in, you're paving. What do you do with that mix at the end of the day? Throw it in the last truck or two, however much you got there. Have them haul it back to the plant. They'll use it in the recycle pile, right? Oh, another spill, right? Do we do a good job training? How many have hired trucks, brokered, or they're not your own drivers? Yeah. So sometimes that's a challenge, right? Like training wise. They might be hauling dirt and then they haul asphalt and stuff like that. And I'm talking to myself again. We don't always do a good job of training them, right? We just say, hey, there's a job site. Get loaded at the plant, show up at the job and dump in there. But they need to be trained too on the asphalt part of it, right? You got to apply light brake pressure so that truck doesn't roll away from the paver when you're on a bit of a downgrade or even level. And grade conditions, what we're paving on top of, that can cause big time mat defects, right? So if that base is soft or even a truck, too much brake pressure, when that paver's pushing that truck along, could dig into the base there and tear up that aggregate base. So lots of things that can go on there. Another one, soft base, Friday afternoon, it was good. Monday morning, it rained all weekend. Truck backed in and right down in the grade there, right? So lots and lots of different things. So big thing here is really inspecting. Anybody uses a rubber tired roller, that'll find all your soft spots, right? Before or after you put mix down. So again, just grade conditions. If we can inspect them ahead of time, get ahead of the paver at least a little bit, see what's going on, right? What are we going to do with that one? We're going to just pave over top of it? Yeah? If I got a good steel drum roller operator, I can say, yeah, just bridge the drum and go over it and it won't show up. Or if I got a rubber tire, I'll tell them to go around it, right? But what do I really want to do here? I want to fill it in before I pave over it, right? And that may just be a few shovelfuls of mix and, get 240 Gordy out there and stomp it down even. It's going to do better than just paving over that pothole, right? Because if I just pave over that, no density, water, pothole, blah, blah, blah. So getting ahead and just seeing what you got coming up. And this is a high spot, right? So I got that there. I go through with the paver. My base wasn't really that great. Now I've got a bump in there, or a thick spot or a thin spot. So you got to watch those trucks driving around, especially on the aggregate base jobs, right? That they're not going to tear up that base before we pave it. Still on grade conditions, slope. What are these guys doing? They're checking the slope ahead of the paver just to see what they got coming up, right? So if they've got any high spots or low spots, they got a high spot, what do they want to do? Perfect world, if the mill's still around, get them to grind that down or get it level so it's not, there's a high spot there. You can see where the cone is. I'm going to have a really thin mat there. Am I going to have any density? No. Probably going to break rock when I go over it with the rollers. Don't vibe over that area, right? But it's going to be lower density. So again, inspecting ahead of time, making any fixes you need to do on the base conditions. Okay, switching gears. Segregation, that's a mat defect, right? So if we've got segregated mix going down, good old Mr. Thermal Camera shows a lot of things up too. But when I've got, what's segregation? Big rocks and little rocks separating, right? So we want to have that uniform mix that they designed in the lab, did a great job getting the job mix formula nice in the gradation band. And we set the paver up right and all that. Our goal with that is to get that same mix all the way out to the end gate. When we get segregation, that's not happening, right? So again, we're going to get differential compaction in those areas where it's segregated. It's going to be maybe open surface. We got moisture in there. Where I live in Minnesota, we get a lot of freeze thaw or freezing, and water gets in there and it just blows them apart quickly. So when we look at segregation, that's the big rocks and the little rocks separating. It is different than mat texture. So texture is just on the surface, right? And in all honesty, for the most part, texture isn't a structural defect or something like that. It is an appearance thing. But there is a difference between true segregation, where you get the big rocks, little rocks separating, where you're not going to get density, you're going to have smoothness problems, and where you've just got slight variations in the surface texture. So another picture just showing surface texture. The goal, again, uniform texture though from end gate to end gate, right? So a few slides just showing, you can see a little texture difference in the center there, right? You kind of got to look close. This one's a lot more obvious, right? So where's the texture difference here? I've got my main screed and then both extensions, right? And I can see more open texture behind those screed extensions. We can get into why that is. Screed extensions are running at a different angle than the main screed is. They're kind of nose down. They're tearing that mix or plowing it a little bit versus being up at a bit higher angle of attack. So texture, segregation. There's a difference there. Segregation being the really bad one, if you will, from a quality standpoint. So how do we identify segregation? Quite often it's visual, right? It's the inspector in the field looks at it. This doesn't look good. It's us looking at our, something's not right. So there's no test that I know of where they actually measure segregation. Maybe there is one out there. I haven't seen it yet. But typically when we look at segregation, we got 3 different types, right? 3 patterns, if you will. So the goal here is really we got to identify what we're seeing, and then before we can figure out how to fix it. So we get repeat patterns, I'll call them. So it's the same defect, or segregation, but we keep seeing it on a regular basis. Same pattern. We've got continuous stripes in the mat, if you will, longitudinal. And then the hardest ones to figure out are the random patch segregation. So I got one here, and then 20 feet away I got another one. I don't see another one for 300 feet, and so on. And those are the hardest ones to figure out, and those are also usually the ones that are related to the setup of the feed system on the paver. Segregation around the paver. So when we look at the paver itself, we've got the feed system, right? That's our augers, conveyors, feed sensors, so the sonic eye, if you will, that's on the screed helping us control the amount of mix back there, the head of material, and then the hopper of the paver that receives the mix. So hopper management. So this is a big one. So when we're talking about segregation, running that hopper low in between trucks, or even if we're using a transfer machine, right? It doesn't have to be in between trucks. You all see that once in a while? Hopefully it's only once in a while or never. But one thing we want to do here to minimize segregation is always keep those chains or those conveyors covered in the hopper. So in between trucks, you want to have about a quarter of a hopper full, maybe a third full, when that next truck dumps on top of it. So that, because when that hopper runs right down, what do we get there? A whole bunch of big rocks, right? They all roll to the middle on the conveyor, and that's the next thing that comes down. End of load segregation, so that's that, what I'll call repeat patch, if you will. Segregation, right? So that's in between truckloads. Got my window cam going there in Ohio. But you can just see it driving down the road, right? Equally spaced, rock pocket, truckload, every truckload. There's another one, believe it or not, it's actually the road going into our training grounds in Arizona. So going to our paving school, you'll see it. But end of load segregation, the contractor there, right? It's just like nicely spaced out. You like that one? Pretty darn even though, right? So we get segregation, that end of load segregation, that's dumping into running that hopper level low. Drops at the plant, so loading a truck, 3-drop method. I think we've mostly all heard of that, right? One at the front, one at the back, and then the last drop in the middle, just to minimize, again, the big rocks rolling to the outside edges of that truck box and not getting all those big rocks coming out in one shot. It's still going to happen, but we try to minimize it. So here's Todd's probably one of my number one peeves. These guys are paving. If you look at the hopper, it's what? Empty, right? Nothing in it. What do you see back here? Empty hopper. What do you see back at the screed? Kind of hard to see back there, but it's full of mix, right? So these guys paving along, they just, oh yeah, we still got mix back here. Got nothing up there. What's going to happen? You got that empty in the middle, right? It ran low like that at one point, and now it's completely empty in there. You got a little bit sitting on the chains. Next truck comes back, does what? Raises truck bed, what comes in? Mix. What's the first thing that probably comes in off the outside edges of that truck bed? Some rocks, right? And then that load breaks and it comes into the hopper. What's in the tunnels between the hopper and the augers back at the screed? Air. There's nothing in there, right? So what's going to happen? What holds the screed up while we're paving? The mix underneath it. So we got that constant, we need mix under there, or that screed's going down on us, right? Dropping. So truck comes in, dumps in there, we start paving, a bunch of air comes back. What's the screed do? Drops, and then the mix comes and the screed does what? Goes back up, right? That's the wee daddy. You guys know what the wee daddies are? You're driving down the road and you go, hit the bump and he goes, wee daddy! And the kids in the back seat are like, yeah, I love that. And I'm like grinding my teeth because it was, this was happening, right? Or it was a bad takeoff maybe at a transverse joint, but this kind of thing, right? But it's not my first rodeo, so that truck comes, dumps, I'm on the screed, what do? Hit the manual overrides and bring the mix back because I know there's nothing in there, right? 9 times out of 10, what do? I overload it, overfeed it, right? And then what happens when I take off? Up, and there's my other wee daddy, right? So I get the double wee daddy. But keeping mix in that hopper level in between trucks is really, really key, right? Just mainly because of that head of material and segregation. especially when we get into those large stone mixes. 3/4 inch or even a 1 inch rock in that mix, we're asking for trouble if we run that hopper low. So keep the tunnels covered, keep some mix in there, don't run it empty. People ask me, fold the wings. That's fine if you do it consistently and don't spill mix out on the grade. Doing it randomly I don't like, so either fold the wings between every truck and don't spill a bunch of mix out front, or just leave the wings down and clean them out a little bit at the end of the day. Then you got your remixing transfer machines, right? So they're going to help remix, get a better blend in there, that mix coming from the plant or in that truck. So if there is a little bit of segregation coming that way, this is going to definitely help us, right? So you can see here, it's just a nice looking mat using the MTV and the paver. And you don't have that contact with between the truck and the paver, right? But you can do good quality paving without them. I'm not saying you need to have an MTV by any means. I've seen really good paving crews end dumping all day long, right? If they do it and pay attention to what they're doing. Cold chunks, another mat defect, right? What do those cold chunks do? They go through, number one, they're a lot of work for that loop man or the raker pulling those cold chunks out of there. But again, those are going to pop out on us. They're going to be the birth of another pothole there, right? So truck exchange, I showed the hopper running low and all that. What do? It's really a 4-step procedure if we're end dumping into the paver, right? So there's your paver pushing a truck, mix is coming under. We're going to release that truck, let that truck take off. We're going to keep paving as that mix goes down in the hopper. And then step 3, if we're folding the wings consistently and not spilling mix out, we're going to fold the hopper wings, get a little more of that mix going through there. And then at some point, really the best thing to do is to stop, right, in between those trucks. So when I first got into paving, I don't know, 30 some odd years ago, best paver operator, never stop, right? You got the decel pedal here, you can slow down and you just keep going, you slow down when that truck takes off, and then that next truck comes back and lines up and gets his bed up. Then you let off on the pedal and speed back up, right? How did we measure smoothness back then? Big, long, straight edge, right? So it only measured 12, maybe 25 feet. What do we do now? Where's my friend Nick? What do we do now? We use the laser profiler, right? High-speed profiler. That's doing like 100-foot wavelengths. So it's picking up those long, I don't even know what you call them, scallops or waves in the mat. And every time we slow that paver down, it's that same thing, that same action with that head of material drops and then increases. So your screed, even though it may be subtle, is still doing this, right? So there's your 4-step deal like I just went over on the truck exchange. But the big thing there is just keep paving, fold your wings, don't spill mix. You got large stone mix, probably a better idea just to keep the hopper wings down and clean them out later in the day. And there's your truck backing up. You got the dump man there. He's doing what? Giving him a quick signal stop just short of the paver, a foot or a few inches. The paver's going to pick up now and start pushing that truck. Right? These guys, I felt really bad up in Wisconsin. They're doing one of the best smoothness jobs I've ever seen. I caught them trying to get a video doing a great job. And that one time, it was probably the only truck all day, backed up and hit the paver because they were talking to each other and not giving the driver signal or whatever, right? But we don't want to back into the paver, right? Because what happens? Push that screed back, and I get a mark in there. Is that going to roll out? Maybe, but probably not. Depends how hard he backs into it and hits it. But folding hopper wings. So lots of things, mat defects related to that truck exchange, right? Good hopper flashing on the paver, trucks rolling away, training drivers, clean out area, all that good stuff. Random patch, that's the hard one to find. Y'all use hopper inserts, transfer machine, hopper inserts. Do they solve all our segregation problems? No, right? I can run that hopper insert low just like I can run that paver hopper low. And what comes down at the bottom of that thing? A bunch of rocks, right? So you still have to manage that hopper level. There's good technology out there now. They've got little sonic deals that'll indicate what level that hopper's at, because you can't really see inside of it when you're a paver operator. But there you go. There's a bunch of rocks accumulating in there when it's run low, right? Drop height even on that conveyor. So transfer machine dropping into either into the insert or right into the paver hopper. What happens the higher I drop a bunch of rocks from, what do they do more? Separate, right? So again, just keeping that conveyor even down as low as you can to that hopper instead of having that thing way up in the air and letting all those big rocks roll to the edges of the hopper. And I see these longitudinal stripes like that. Most time I'm thinking right off the bat, that's the feeder setup, feed system on the paver. Probably conveyors going too fast, bringing back from the hopper, right? And throwing rocks when the mix comes off the end of those conveyor chains, and leaving those longitudinal stripes segregation. So again, why does that happen? It's probably sonic feed sensors that work with the augers and conveyors to bring that mix back. Probably just not set up right, so the conveyors are running faster than they should be. Again, there's different reasons. It's hard to say specifically unless you're on the job looking at it. But it is a feed system problem when you start seeing those two stripes like that. So, and random patches, usually feeder setup or sonic feed sensor. So there's your feed sensor. I don't know if anybody's still using a paddle sensor, but that's controlling your mix height back in the screed there, the amount of mix we have. So if that isn't aimed properly or pointed in the right spot, those augers do what? They turn, because that feed sensor is saying, hey, I need mix. Auger turns, then it sees mix, then it stops. Then it turns, then it stops. So getting those feed sensors aimed properly is really critical. Sometimes we get a stripe in the mat and it's just this, right? Screed, we hit a manhole or water valve, we damaged it somehow, and it doesn't take much. It can be 1/8 of an inch or just a little ding in that nose strike-off plate on the screed, and it'll leave you a line all day long that you can't get rid of until you fix it. Centerline stripe, not as big a deal now as it used to be, I guess, back in the day. So back in the day, the older pavers, the drive pump or drive motors for the augers was down at the bottom. You had that big gear case down there, and you get centerline segregation. Now the drive motor is actually up here. It's just a chain going down to drive the augers, so it's a lot smaller deal down in the center there. So this is, but it still happens. You'll still see centerline segregation because you got that space between the conveyors, right? So sometimes you'll still get mix in there, or it'll build up. We don't put lead crown in our screeds anymore. I don't want to get into that for the sake of time today, but you can put lead crown in, can help get rid of some of that centerline texture or segregation if you're seeing it. And that's an older picture on the bottom right. You can see the bigger gearbox down there for the augers causing it. But the lead crown's just the front edge of that screed plate. It's got a little bit of crown in it. The back edge is still flat. What it does is just kind of funnels the mix under to that center and helps compact it a little more and get rid of that center line. But you look at the pavers nowadays, they have a deflector plate. So coming off the chains, you got this little, it's a wear item. I mean, it's just a piece of steel. It's going to wear out. But mix will also build up on it. So that red dashed line is the outline of that steel, and you can see the mix building on it. And sometimes all it is that mix just needs to be knocked off of there with a shovel handle every once in a while, and it'll get rid of that centerline streak or stripe that that you're seeing. Or that deflector plate eventually wears out and maybe doesn't get replaced. The other thing, reversing auger. So on the left there, you see a reversing auger segment. So what that does is that 6-inch section moves that mix, actually, instead of moving it left, it moves it underneath that chain case, again, to get mix under there and get rid of that center line. There's a lot of little things to look at. In the middle there, right where it says stagnant mix, that's where you'll see in the very center, that mix isn't moving at all, right? You got hot mix on both sides going out left and right, but right in the middle there, that'll build up, get cold, and then it'll just start dragging. And again, that's shovel handle, knock it out if you start seeing that line. And maybe you have to do it once an hour or something like that. There's your feed sensor. So sonic, sound wave to the mix. Sound wave comes back, measures distance. You're using the mix height dial on the screed to control, if you will, the amount of mix there, or how high you want that mix to be. If that isn't aimed right, so I look at this one where the yellow arrow is, what's it catching? It's catching that mix coming off rolling off the mainframe, if you will, or the tunnel of that screed. So in that it's catching that area, what's it doing? It's constantly changing, right? So it tells the auger to go, get me more mix, and then what's it do? Brings a bunch more, and then the sonic sensor goes, hey, I got way more than I need now, and it stops. So it turns and stops, turns, stops, and it's just because that's not aimed in the right spot. We want to hit the live aim or point that at the live moving material. So that mix that's just constantly flowing in a nice uniform way. I go to a lot of jobs and I see those things pointed where straight down to the grade, right? So again, I get that on-off auger movement. What does it end up showing me? Stripes in the mat, right? And those are the ones that'll appear for a little while, and then they'll go away, and then they'll come, and then they'll go. But ideally about 18 inches from the mix to the sensor and about 18 inches off the end of that last auger segment. That's where I want to point that sonic feed sensor. That's a rear mount screed there, showing extension behind the main screed, but same principle with the front mount extenders. Auger speed's another one. So again, did that nice mix design in the lab and made a nice mix at the plant, right in the job mix formula. Those augers are designed to do what? Carry that mix out. If they're going too fast, what do? They throw rocks, right? Or if I got it buried, if I have too much mix in the screed there, those augers they're not boring machines, right? They're not meant to drill holes. They're meant to carry. So we want to see the top, basically the top half of those augers when we're paving. If we get it buried, we're going to have segregation, probably stripes in our mat. So we shoot for 20 to 40 RPMs on those auger speed. So how do I control auger speed? That's kind of you wouldn't know unless you're a paver operator, but you'd turn up the chains, conveyors, bring more mix back. Those augers don't have to go as fast to make Mr. Feed Sensor happy. So if I got more mix coming back, the augers will slow down. So I turn the chains up to slow down the augers, or I turn down the chains to speed up the augers, and then get in that 20 to 40 RPM range. If I'm really wide and don't have enough auger extension, well, I'm going to bury it and don't have a choice. There's a classic on the thermal camera showing longitudinal stripes, even though visually you can't really see them, but they're there. So, changes in paver speed, kind of talked about that already, right? The quick starts and stops versus the slow down, speed up in between trucks. And we've done a bunch of studies on it, and with end dumping directly into the paver, and we've seen a lot better smoothness just with that quick stop and then that quick start again in between trucks. And why is that? If you feather it, you feather that propel lever, so say you stop between trucks and then you start out again and you just what happens? Well, the paver's not even moving yet, but the feed system kicks in. So now mix starts coming back, but the machine isn't hardly moving. That's why you want to do that full stroke. So you're going to set your speed dial on the paver to 40 feet a minute or whatever you're doing, and then just full stroke it. It's not like the old days 30 years ago where if you did that, it'd throw you off the back of the paver. They're all designed now, they ramp up nice and smooth and quick, and it's a good way of doing it. And sometimes it's just the flatness of that trailing edge of the main screed. You might see lines in the mat, so quick, easy check, pull a string line across the trailing edge, see if that's your problem, and if it is, you may have to adjust those adjusters on the back. So that's something maybe the mechanics are doing, but that's another possibility for stripes in your mat. If I got to make a long paver stop, sitting between trucks, waiting for trucks to come, what's that screed do? Sinks down, settles into the mat. That's a bump, right? That's not going to roll out. So yeah, we got this great new technology, right, called screed lock or whatever. So you go to neutral and it holds the screed there. Does that solve my problems? No. It might mask them a little bit, maybe not quite as severe, but it doesn't get rid of it, right? It'll hold that screed while you're sitting there. Then I take off. Well, at some point, whatever the timer is on that screed lock, whether it's 10 seconds or 5 seconds, it releases, right? Screed goes back into float, and now what happens? So instead of having a bump here, now I just moved it there, right? So it will help, don't get me wrong, but it's not a fix or a cure-all for sitting on the mat with that screed for a long period of time. We kind of generally have found more than about 6 minutes sitting there, you're probably going to have some effect on your IRI. And not, it may not be terrible. Depends on the weather and the temperature and all that stuff. But there's a good old thermal image again. A long paver stop. Probably hard to see the numbers there, but really you got 4 zones, right? What's in the auger chamber, what's under the screed plate, what's under the catwalk that the rollers can't get to, and then the new stuff when the paver took off after the next truck. So, but you can see it ranged all the way from 189 to 266, right? 4 different temp zones, if you will. So, auger height, a lot of times it's as simple as that. You see that texture in the mat, looking a little open there. Maybe that auger just need to bump the switch and bring it up 1/4 of an inch or maybe down a little bit, get rid of that mat texture or make it look uniform all the way across. So, and your angle of attack, so we set up, take off at the right angle of attack. We've got a uniform texture all the way across. It's really hard to see in this picture. I got a better one coming up, I think. But that extension on the right side, it's slightly different texture than it is behind the main screed, because that extension's running at a slightly different angle of attack than the main screed is. Now it's pretty obvious here, right? See that left side, how open it is? Nice and tight behind the main screed. That means my extension isn't running at the same angle of attack. That's an adjustment that I can make, right? And I make those adjustments, now I get a nice uniform texture, right, all the way. And where it gets a little tricky is screed, it's all flotation, right, the mix supporting that screed. So when I get wider, my flotation is different. So sometimes you won't see anything, but then you extend that a little bit, and then you might start to see a little bit of texture problems or issues. But if they're not severe, I don't think it's anything to worry about. I wouldn't want to see that all day long at the fixed same width. But. Auger extensions, tunnels, so there on the left you got the front mount screed. So when I talk about front mount, I just mean the extensions are in front of the main screed. Like going in and out. Rear mount screed, extensions are behind the main screed. Why does that matter? On a front mount screed, you want auger to go really about 1.5 feet from the end gate. And when you get beyond that, then you have to start loading too much mix in that auger chamber, and what do you do? And now you're burying the augers. They're not carrying that mix nice and uniform all the way. It's doing more of that boring action, and I start to get stripes in my mat or segregation, right? So auger extensions when I need them, again, about 1.5 feet really with the front mount screed. Rear mount, a little more forgiving the way gravity works. It comes off the end and back into that corner, that rear-mounted extension, and get away with about 3 feet before I need to start adding auger extension on there. The golden rule is whenever I put auger extension on, I always want to have what in front of it? Tunnels, tunnel extensions, mainframe extensions, because I don't want that mix to roll forward. It rolls forward, what do I get? Those rocks roll out, and you'll see stripes in your mat. And there's really wide, right? Is that a good setup? Negative Ghost Rider, right? And especially when they're paving that wide all day long. Get auger extensions on there. You're not overloading that screed. You see that auger stop there for a minute. But yeah, get auger extensions on there. I didn't have the back view showing the stripe in the mat. And a couple more of the same thing, so I'm just blasting past them. That's your rear mount screed. So in the back, on the far right there, that's that pocket where that rear extender is. That mix will get cold in there. You can put your hand on it because it stays there all day long. And that's another area you just have to knock it out every once in a while so that you don't get texture stripes in the mat. So, and screed extension lines. So you ever see we got those longitudinal lines? It's usually about a 5-second fix, right? And I've seen crews pave all day long with that line. See that line there? In line with where the main screed and the extension meet. There's another one. Another line there. All that is a height mismatch between the main screed and the screed extension. So I either have to raise that extension up a little bit or lower it just a little bit, and that line will go away, right? And it's the button there to raise and lower it moves. That screed extension moves really slow. So I just stand there, hold the button, look right down. As soon as that line goes away, it's gone. I'm good, right? So I just follow it to where it is. So right here, there's the edge of the main screed. That line is inside edge of that extension. So what that tells me is my extension's lower than the main screed. All the weight's on the extension more. So I'm going to raise that extension up, and that line should go away. If I don't have that straight in my head, it'll just get worse, and then it'll take me 7 seconds instead of 3 seconds, because I got to go the other way to get rid of that line. Shovel, rake, handwork, those are all opportunities for mat defects, right? So longitudinal joints. Do we need to rake it like that? No, right? So we can set that up, do a good joint match, get the right height with our grade sensor on there, and not even have to touch that joint. Let the rollers compact it, and away we go, right? And there's another one, airport job, and they got the right height match. Roller's going to come in, just knock that down. Got the ring gates down. We get a big coarse mix, like the guy on the left. Might have to just bump that joint just a bit with the lute, but don't need to be doing this, right? And that's density and smoothness. I mean, if I start broadcasting, what do? Push mix away from the joint. What fails first on our pavements to begin with? It's that joint, right? So I don't want to be pushing mix away from it. Takeoff, that's, there's our, what we call paving by the numbers, but those are the steps to go through, setting down and taking off. And I'm going to have to wrap up quick because I know it's getting close to lunchtime. But does that look like a good takeoff? Looks there, thank you. No, looks like a burned out heating element maybe on the screed, right? It's cold, that section, so they took off with a cold screed. At least that element needs to be replaced. Does that look like a good place to start? I see it a lot, but does that mean it's good? Because what do I got there? Mill come in, did a plunge cut, right? So it's really thick right there when I sit down with the paver now and take off. what do you think that area is going to do? It's going to roll in more, right? So I'm probably going to end up with a dip there. And not only that one's not as bad as some I've seen, but if it tapers out too much, what do I end up with? I got real thin there. There's no density, right? So what's it start to do? It starts to ravel under traffic and starts peeling away. Where do we see a lot of our failures? Longitudinal joints and right there, transverse joint, right? So you want to have a good square edge there. Maybe you have to saw cut it or something. What's wrong with this takeoff? No starter boards, right? We got to set that screed on something to take off. That thing's free floating on the mix. Well, there is no mix when we take off. So we got to set it on some boards, the right thickness for compaction to support that screed until we get some mix under it and get going. I just set right down on the pavement there. I mean, it's already flush. I got one of two things is going to happen, right? I'm probably going to cross roll it because I want it to match, but then there's no density there, right? So where's it going to start peeling up on me? Right there, right? So not the best boards in the world, but better than none, right? Survey laugh. Surveyors might not be happy. They plucked them out of the ground. So what's this guy doing? He's measuring the thickness of the existing where they're going to take off. Notice the nice saw cut edge there. So he can get the right thickness of starter boards. So they want to pave 2 inches in there, compacted, right, to match that. So how much loose? 2.5. So what do his boards need to be? He's going to set the screed on where he's kneeling right now. He's going to have 1/2 inch boards, right? So when that screed sits down, they fill it up, take off. That mix will be 2.5 inches thick. Roller will hit it. It's going to roll down 1/2 inch, get good density, and match, right? Match the existing. So those starter boards are key. 4 feet long, you want them to go all the way under from the front of the main screed all the way out behind the trailing edge of the extensions. So you got to have them full length to get support under that screed when you fill up to take off. If I got a little board like that, Todd, I was the guy, the foreman would say, Todd, can you go get some soda cans or find a couple rocks about the same size and set the screed on? Like you got on the right there. But when I fill up, null out, take off, what's that screed going to do? It's probably going to nose over on me, right? Even though I did everything else to get a good takeoff, because it's just not supported, right? You got 9,000 pounds, 9,000 to 10,000 pounds of screed sitting on almost nothing. So getting some good boards, keeping them on the paver, different thicknesses for those takeoffs. Then the last thing here, can the rollers mess up all the beautiful paving job we did? Hell yeah, right? So when it comes to mat defects, rollers going too fast, impacts per foot, right? You get impact spacing too far apart, that could affect our not only density, but our ride. Stop and square on the mat, like you see in the bottom center there. Actually, yeah, there you go. That guy in the bottom center, stop and square. What's that going to put in my mat? It's going to put a bump, right? Because all it does is pushes mix down the road, and then at some point enough of that mix builds up and the roller goes up and over it. So what do? We stop at an angle and it'll roll out when we come through on our next roller pass. Head of material, talked about that, but what I will say, talked a lot about mat defects here this morning. I would say probably even more than 85. I'd say 95% of all the mat defects we see or have in the field are related to managing that head of material, the amount of mix at the screed at half auger height. So keeping the hopper itself, keeping mix in there, keeping half auger height head of material all the way across. What's that require us to do? Requires that we have proper auger extension for the width that we're paving, set our sonic feed sensor in the right spot. All those things come together now to this head of material. And if we focus on that, I can guarantee you a lot of the problems, if you're having any, will disappear. It's just managing that head of material. Consistency, right? And there's your head of material, half auger height. So again, focusing on that. doing the fundamentals right. I say avoiding big mistakes, so I'm talking to myself here again. Don't do stupid things. And quality costs nothing, right? I mean, I haven't shown you anything here that costs you any more. You've already got all the equipment, right? Maybe training is the biggest thing, but there's no fancy high technology going into any of this, right? And we have a lot of technologies out there now, but I'll tell you right now, they don't fix not doing the basics right. We can get into 3D paving and all that stuff, but if we're not doing this correctly, that stuff isn't going to fix it, right? So, planning ahead, communicating, teamwork. I know that wasn't every Matt defect in the world, but I tried to hit on some of the high ones. And any questions? I'll be around if anybody has any questions, but I thank you for bearing with me through this and the IT thing. We're good. So thank you.